Shut up, compressor. Hey everyone, Matt here with Duke's Models, and welcome to the first installment of the 1/32nd scale Trumpeter P-38L Lightning build. Now, the way that this kit found its way onto my bench is a bit of an interesting story. So, late last year, Attila with Red Fox Studios reached out to me asking if I would be willing to test some of their cockpit 3D decal applique things. And if you're not familiar with them, they're pretty similar to what Quinta has been doing with those raised detail decals that replace all the interior shit and are a lot better looking than photo etch. So I said sure, and as part of that agreement, they decided to go ahead and send me a kit to apply them to as well. And so looking through their list, the P-38 kind of jumped out at me. And so the entire plan for this whole thing was to build the cockpit and showcase the decals in the cockpit and how they come out and how it looks and give my thoughts, etc. And that's still my plan, no matter what that's happening. However, I'm also thinking about building the whole thing. And so I'm doing the build series just in case. Though, full caveat, this may well end in tears and a non-completion. Because it's Trumpeter, and who knows. They can get kind of wacky sometimes. So when the box arrived, it not only had the instructions in it, it had the kit in it too, which is always nice. And it had two sets of Red Fox's P-38 Lightning instrument panel and various other things. And I'll be going into much more detail on these in a future installment, but they look pretty damn cool. They're definitely better than photo etch. I think they're better looking than the Edward Look panels. They look quality-wise pretty much on par with Yahoo, except they have raised details. So that sets them for sure apart. So pretty excited to play with these once I get to the cockpit. Also in the box, and I just find this kind of amusing, they decided to throw in a whole shitload of stickers. I don't know why I find that so funny. You know, one or two, sure, but this is like 30. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them yet, but I'm sure they'll find some sort of interesting use around the bench. So the reason that these sets are going to sit for a little bit is the breakdown of this kit is not like most kits. Okay, let's take a quick tour, shall we? So most kits, most World War II aircraft kits, start in the cockpit. This one doesn't. It starts with building the Allison engines. Now, oddly enough, there's really no way to display these. The fuselages of the, or not the fuselages, the booms, I guess they're called, of the P-38 are solid. There's no real provision here for having them opened up showing the engine. So, for some reason, Trumpeter still gives you the engine and all the shit inside it. Kind of like they do with the P-47. And all that means is that I'm going to build this very quickly. This is basically going to provide structure for mounting the props to the engine itself. It's going to provide some detail for the radiator and probably a bit of structural support for the engine itself. It will probably also help me greatly with holding some weight that needs to be, I'm sure, probably added to the front of the aircraft because P-38s are tail heavy. From there, we move on to the gear bays. And yes, it looks like the gear struts have to be installed early on, just the way that they are set up. They locate into the sidewalls that come together, so I don't really see a way around that. And that's going to be interesting. That's going to mean that I'm going to be painting and weathering and all that shit the gear struts very early in the build. Fun times. Hey, look, it's another side. So then what happens is you take that assembly of the engine and the gear bay, put it inside the boom. This is the clear part that represents the mirror that goes on the inside face of the boom, so the pilot can look and tell that the landing gear is down. And it's a clear part, which is going to make things interesting. But fortunately, that comes in from the outside, so I can worry about that later. The rudder goes on with... This is old enough vintage that Trumpeter still has their weird little metal bullshit going on with the PE and the metal rods. Not a big fan of that, and honestly, I don't really want the rudders to move anyway, so we'll see what we do with that when the time comes. Put the other one together, woohoo. Then we move into the center of the aircraft, and we're still not quite to the cockpit yet. We're into the nose gear and the nose gear bay. And the nose gear bay actually is built from the floor of the cockpit. So do all that shit. Then we finally get around to working in the cockpit. So this is where the Red Fox stuff will come into play. It will replace the instrument panel. Won't really deal with the radio shit so much. I'll probably add my own fun things to that. Where's the next page? Then we've got the control yoke. We've got the little switch gear shit that, again, this thing is going to play a role. We've got the throttle, which frustratingly, this doesn't extend to the throttle body. I would have loved to have seen that, but I think maybe it has enough contours going on that it's a tough thing to handle. I don't know. But it looks like they give us some photo etch here to play with, and between the photo etch and, you know, the ability to add glue to make the knobs round instead of flat, I'm not too concerned about that. One interesting thing here, I noticed this when I was looking through this last night. Everybody loves HGW belts, right? Loves the whole micro textile fabric-y thing with photo etch. That's exactly what Trumpeter has you do here, except they recommend paper. I'm going to guess, just based on past experience in Trumpeter, that these various belt parts are probably closer to like 1/24th scale. Their belt parts are always huge. So I will probably be using HGW instead. But it's cool that they have kind of, you know, they were trailblazers with this thing here. If they'd included the paper, it would have been A+ effort. But this is, you know, solid B. Then all the shit comes together. Seat, bulkhead, radio gear, cockpit, sidewall, cockpit. It all gets joined together on top of the nose gear bay. Then for some reason we move into flaps. I don't know why. You know, not going to be dealing with those too much, because the P-38 doesn't really splay its flaps out all that much. So we install flaps in the upper wing. I love how there's like all these steps and all this shit happening up here, right? And then step 23 is one little fucking piece. Great use of real estate, guys. Then we move on to joining the upper wing assembly, cockpit, nose gear with the lower wing, and there's the boarding ladder. Then we add the outer wings and all the various flaps and ailerons, pylons. I will not be installing the lenses at this point. Those will wait until later. Moving along, here we have the rear elevator, rear stabilizer kind of thing. So front part, back part. We've got the props. I've actually got some, I think they're Jerry Ruttman props on order that are meant to replace these. And they provide basically a center hub, and then you drill the, or you don't drill, you basically have separate blades that you install. If that fails, I'm going to repeat what I did with the P-40F and lop off the blades, install some brass tubing, and just be able to shove them in like that. So I can put the hub in there and be good that way. Close this, make sure this is a nice, clean, pretty join, and then put the props in afterwards. Because the spinners will not be a beat up grayish black. So, save myself some masking. Rockets on the rocket trees. I won't be touching these because the P-38 that I'm looking at building doesn't have them. So I'm looking at building an L1, and this is an L5, and I guess the L1s didn't really have those. They also didn't have these little fuel pump bulges, but fuck it, those are staying. It looks like a huge pain to remove them and restore detail. At least, or not a huge pain, but more of a pain than I'm willing to put up with. So they're staying. Anyway, at this point, this is where the booms get added to the wings. This is where the elevator gets sandwiched between the tail booms. This is where the compression flaps get added. I don't know why anybody would ever do these things open, so I'm going to install them closed. Nice and simple. Then we get underwing things, bombs, fuel tanks. I don't know about that yet. I don't know what I want to install there. Bombs would be kind of fun though. But yeah, I just need to kind of look into that. Interestingly, it looks like the P-38 uses the same deep approach clear parts for the wing lights as the P-40F, which is cool to see because those were really effective. So, happy for that one. And we got the pitot tube right there. We got the lens for the landing light. I don't think any... I need to go back and look, but I don't think anything kind of goes in between there to really provide detail that I noticed. Yeah, it looks like it's just a blank spot. So I might need to address that. Because that's some bullshit. Could be a good use for the 3D printer. Print up a little lens for that. I've even got some clear resin I can try. At that point, it becomes adding all the little bullshit. So, lower mast antenna, that will probably wait because that's just asking to be knocked off. I've got some Edward exterior PE coming that I think replaces this, the outlet louvers. Radiator faces, etc. go on here. Nice, nice, nice. Counterweights. I'm curious to see how solid these connections are because that is something that I could totally see myself knocking off. Another thing that I have yet to make up my mind on is what I want to do about the gun bays. So I have barrels coming. I don't know if I want to display it opened up or not, or even save myself the ability to do that. I just don't know. Could be cool, could also be a huge giant pain in the ass. So I will maybe look at this a bit more when I get around to it and I start looking at the parts. And if the parts suck ass, then I'll skip it. But if they're decent, that might be an option that could be fun to play with. Then we move into the radiator assemblies for the sides of the booms. Nice and simple there. Again, I think I have some photo etch that's going to replace pieces of this, maybe. We'll find out. Gun bay gets installed. The gun sight gets installed. Rear part of the canopy gets installed. Then we move on to the gun bay cover installation. This thing is supposed to be movable. We'll see how likely that is. In my experience, things that are movable that are not made by Tamiya generally suck. So, and this is Trumpeter. We've got the side cockpit windows. These things actually roll down or push down. I'm not sure which the exact mechanism is, but they raised and lowered. And almost every shot you see of a P-38 with the cockpit open has these things pretty much lowered almost all the way to the upper sill. So I'm planning to do something similar to that. Then the last part is the just kind of throw everything together at the very end element. So we've got the props going on, we've got the nose going on, windscreen. I don't know why the fuck you would add the windscreen last. there you have it. Various bits around the booms here. We've got the radiator housings. We've got the outside of the rear stabilizer. We've got more clear parts. Just kind of a whole bunch of shit thrown in a Part 39 sandwich. And we're back to the front. So, that's the P-38. Now, it's time to start with the Allison engines, so let me find these parts and we will start breaking out the glue. Okay, so I've removed and cleaned up a selection of parts, and these are the ones that are basically what is needed to get the shell of the engine together. I'm not really too focused on getting everything in here because what's the fucking point? I mean, it's going to be buried underneath the boom halves anyway, so makes it hard to really expend a lot of effort like detailing an engine that's going to be invisible. This is nice and aligned. This is basically just a slam together type of thing. I'm leaving the top open so I can go in and drop some weight in there if I feel that's necessary, which I'm sure I will. Yeah. One frustrating thing about these parts is there's a sprue gate right here by this connecting pin. Getting in there to clean that up so it doesn't interfere is not awesome. But it'll still do its job. Now, if one wanted to, there's a lot of opportunity for super detailing this engine. Shut up, compressor. These two bits get glued together just like so. Frames attached to the bulkhead back here just like so. Don't fall off on me, you piece of fucking shit. And there's a lot of little accessory bits that go onto these engines that are not necessary. So we're skipping quite a bit. Alright. A few more bits to go. So these just fit into here like this. Now there are also some photo etch grills that go on the front of the inlets here. I'm not going to add them just yet because I want to drop a little bit of black paint or something back there first. And the fit is honestly kind of bullshit, but we're going to have a bunch of things in front, so it won't be super obvious anyway. All right. Let's see what comes next, shall we? Landing gear stuff. Great. So this is where I'm going to probably have to stop and do a bit of painting. Because we've got not only the gear struts, I've also got some of the turbocharger piping. Got the gear bays. We've got the big long ass line that runs through them. Yeah, a lot of things. All right, I'm going to pause and remove a few more parts, and we'll be back. So, as I was investigating a couple things, I decided to go ahead and do a test fit of the engine into the boom. And basically, down here on the radiator housing, you've got a hole, right? Over here inside the booms, you've got a peg. Now, these pegs were long, and they had some flash on the end, so I went ahead and trimmed them up. But I basically want to see how these things fit. And it is a straight pain in the ass to locate them in here because of just how far back that pin actually is, and it's easy to get one side in. Seeing the other side and lining it up is a nightmare. So first I'm going to go ahead and secure the back of the boom here so that I have something to work with and the whole thing isn't just a giant floppy mess. As you can see, it sits in here and the shape of these two halves glued together is off because that peg will not sit. So I actually caught this on the other boom. And my solution is a pretty novel one. Let's do a little bit of negative modeling here. Yoink. Spread this out. Basically what I'm going to do, I'm just going to deal with getting this piece installed. See if I can break the booms while I'm doing this. One thing about this kit is there's flash all over the damn place. It's really frustrating. Like right up here, I've got to deal with that. Back here, lots of areas, just a little tiny bit of it. Anyway, now that I've got that piece tightly fitting in there, kind of doing what it should do, I'm going to go ahead and reinforce that angle with a little bit more extra thin just along the center line there. Make sure that it holds that shape. And then once those are all firmed up, I can worry about adding the engine bits. Now another thing I'm looking into at the moment is all the turbocharger ducting up here. I don't really think it's super necessary because the engine, as we've already seen, fits into the fuselage all on its own. And I think the gear bays do as well. If you see these little L tabs over here, they correspond very neatly to, hey, what the fuck are you doing back here? That's not cool. There we go. They correspond very neatly to these flash-laden little steps. And so I don't think that the engine and the gear bay actually join up, except for the piping connections, which seem kind of silly. Because when we get around here, I've got the turbocharger right here. That installs right here, and basically that's the only reason that it exists, is to join those two parts, which I don't even know if they show through on the final thing. Because once we get way up here, right, towards the end, you can see the turbochargers up here, and you can see this cover that comes down right there, and basically makes that entire thing almost invisible. So there's a lot of work here for no real benefit. Something to test as I start moving into the gearbase. Alright, so I've been doing some cleanup and some test fitting to figure out kind of the way forward with these booms and with the turbochargers in particular. So there are a few things to go over. First of all, the engine does fit inside the boom, but it is a huge pain in the ass to get it to fit in the first place, because this bottom piece, these two halves, fit into, fuck, I can take this one apart. They fit into these holes on the side of the booms, and they correspond to these holes right here. But getting them to align, put everything together, not exactly a lot of fun. So close those up, and see, even when it's like aligned on one side, these parts just, oh hey, I finally got that one. That's something. Anyway, that is like a running fight of fit on the front, and so it needs a lot of care and a lot of attention, especially because you're not only dealing with the fit of this up here, you also have to deal with getting the gear bays back into these things. And the way that these fit, so let's see, I think this is the one that goes on this side. So these parts come down in here, and these little L braces fit up into these little things here on the side, right? And that's how you get your gear base, just like that. So you have to deal with fitting these on both sides at the same time that you're dealing with this, at the same time that you're dealing with the engines themselves. So it's a lot of things going on. And then on top of that, when you install the turbocharger, which sits basically up here on top of this, so this sits in there like this, like so. This basically just drops down on the top like that, and this sits on top. It's weird that it just kind of sits there. It doesn't have any real like plug in. It just is where it is. But frustrating thing is that it literally comes in here, and I need to tweak these a little bit, my god. But it basically comes in here and sits on these, and that is the attachment point. Great. Even better is on this one over here. I love it when test fits just completely lose their shit. This one is missing its pins. I have no idea where they went. So I might go back in and drill and install some, just so I have a way to actually get this thing to fit reliably, because it'll fit while I'm holding it, but if I let it go or whatnot, it can very easily just break loose and drop down, and that's not cool. So need to figure that out. Other than that, all right, I also went ahead and trimmed off the front of these because they plug into these holes down here off the side of the radiator housing, and that's just stupid and a pain in the ass, because we're talking about something that is literally never going to be seen. So, fuck that. So, anyway, that's a lot of stuff to deal with all at once. On top of that, the gear bays, or not sorry, the gear bays, the gear struts have to be installed into the gear bays ahead of time. And that looks a little something like this. Basically, it's got 2 pins on one side, 1 pin on the other side. These things plug their shit in here. There's another little arm that comes from here up to here, this little hole. Go and show you what these look like as they get assembled. So we've got one side. And so they just come in here like this, and they're nice and trapped, right? They're not going anywhere. So that's a positive. But it means we need to install them before literally closing anything up. And so that means it's time to start paying attention to going ahead and painting and detailing these guys. Honestly, the detail on these could be much better. Let's go zoom in just a little bit. I mean, it's pretty plain, it's pretty flat. The detail's not all that crisp. I thought the oleos were fucked up, but I went and looked at some reference photos, and no, they pretty much look like that. So that's something that we can be cheerful for. But, you know, there's no sort of bolt or pin or anything here. On the oleo scissors, when they get installed, there's nothing on them, so we need to add something there too. So basically just a little bit of detailing, plus we need to run the brake lines, plus if you look very carefully, ejector pin mark, ejector pin mark, ejector pin mark. Of course they would put them on the parts of the gear strut that actually stick out from the gear bay and are highly visible. I mean, yeah, there's some up here too, but who cares? So I need to, first of all, go ahead and remove these damn things. Not my favorite task. So to get the ball rolling on this, bust out a bit of Flexi CA. Good times with the airbrush needle. Basically just come in here, apply the CA. The ones on the main struts don't piss me off so much. This one on the scissor, or on the actual oleo though, come on. Not only is that the part that has to be shiny, that is also the part that is the hardest to get to. Alright, next up, we're going to do a little bit of dental powder. One day I'll figure out a cleaner way to do this, but this is the way that I know how to do it. And then, there we go. That leaves us with something sandable. Another fun thing while we're in kind of prep mode here, the instructions would have you paint all of the gear bay stuff interior green, which I don't even think is necessarily true for the early Lightnings, much less the late ones. They were painted silver or left in bare metal. I'm pretty sure they were painted silver though for corrosion purposes. So now come in here, sanding stick. It's a nice skinny one. Let us get into that oleo area, and basically you want to sand with like a circular motion. There are the cleaned up gear struts. Now it's time to add some detail. I wish that I had a hex punch set small enough to do justice to this, but I don't. So we're going to go with round punches. But good old punch and die set, some styrene, smallest size, rock hammer, bang. Okay, so I've got 4 of these done, and it's getting late and I need to turn in. So we're going to walk through basically how to install some little tiny dots to represent fasteners or hinge pins, whatever you want to call them. So little tiny fucking things. So basically, you're fucking kidding me. Alright, let's grab another one. So very gently. Line it where it needs to be. Get some extra thin. Touch it around the place. Just like so. And again, this is nothing fancy at all. I'd much rather be using hex bolts or some 3D printed fasteners, things like that. But some little dots also do the trick. So that's one way to start adding a little bit of extra detail to the gear struts. Alright, I'm going to turn in for the night, and we're going to pick back up tomorrow, finish adding detail to these struts, and then we're going to start throwing some paint at the gear base. Alright, so I've gone ahead and installed all the various little plastic discs onto the gear struts. Now it is time to deal with the brake lines. And on a P-38, the brake lines basically start up here, come out of the wheel well onto the strut, go down this thing, come down here, kind of go around this way in the strut, run down the top of the oleo scissor. There's a little clip right there, and then they loop off the front and down, and then they plug into the wheel kind of down here. So we're going to do that. Okay, so first things first, I've made up a little metal clip out of some brass wire that I'm going to install on the oleo scissor. Alright, so just like so. Blah. Okay, so I've routed the lead wire through the little ring on the oleo scissor and up along where it needs to go, and I've kind of tacked it with super glue right here. Next comes the super fun part. Of wrapping it. The hardest part of this is always getting it started. Until you get it around once, it has this tendency to want to lift. So that is basically the gist of what's going on. I'm going to get the rest of this wrapped up. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one, and we'll touch back in to wrap up the episode. Alright, so here we have 1 landing gear, 2 landing gear, all prepped up and ready to go. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and draw this first episode to a close, because there's been a lot of talking and a lot of navigating the early parts of the build and planning where to go and all that sort of a thing. And this just seems like a natural breaking point, because from here, I need to start priming a few things. So in episode 2, we'll pick back up with priming shit like the gear base and the landing gear, and go from there. So thanks for watching this first installment of the Trumpeter P-38 build, and I will catch y'all later.